Hello everyone, welcome to the DevForce 2010 Silverlight Tour. I'm Ward Bell, VP of Technology at IdeaBlade, and your host for this short series on the mechanics of using DevForce in a simple CRUD application. Emphasis on mechanics. We're not going to try and dazzle you with beautiful UI and beautiful pictures. There'll be no overstuffed template that drops all kinds of goo into your solution. We're going to keep it simple. This is the No Fluff All Stuff tour. And like any such tour, it should begin with File New. So let's go. So as promised, we are starting File New, and we're going to add a project using a template, and we're going to the DevForce 2010 templates, and we're going to do the DevForce Silverlight application, and we'll call it My Simple Steps for historical reasons. Now, I know I said no templates. Actually, what I meant was no big templates. This is a very simple one, as we'll see when we're done generating here. And what we get back is two projects. One of them is the web project, which is regular.NET, and then we have our Silverlight project, which is where our UI and stuff will go. And we go into the web project here, and we add our model. Which is going to be an ADO Entity Framework model. We'll just type ADO up here and it'll scoot down and find it. And because this is going to be about the Northwind IdeaBlade special database, we're going to call it Northwind IB. We are going to generate from the database. Keep it simple. I'm going to assume now that you haven't even set this up, so we'll make sure that we're talking to SQL Server. We'll be looking at local host, the local server, which is dot is good enough for that. And we'll find a Northwind IB database that was installed when you installed DevForce. Oh, let's go test the connection and make sure it works. It does. Good. Alrighty then. And so it's now going to go find everything, and it's figured it out, and it got the connection string, and it's now looking at the schema. And we're going to be interested in modeling some tables here. We'll grab the customer and the employee and the orders and the order details, which are really line items and product. We're not actually going to use all this, but what the heck. Okay, and wait a minute. Just before I go, I want to note something that's new in Entity Framework 4, which is that now we're going to include the foreign key columns. We're not going to use the relations objects. And we're also going to let the Entity Framework pluralize, which is something that it can do. What that basically means is that if a table name was plural, it'll make it singular, the relationships will be plural, and it's going to do its best. You can still go fix things, but at least it gets you out of the blocks in a way that you would like. So we'll let the Entity Framework Wizard grind away and produce our model, and do it in the usual way. We get some references thrown in there. And pretty soon on the canvas, our familiar model appears. Notice that the entities are singular, employee, order, and so forth. Let's drag employee into position. And we see we have plural navigation properties. We got orders, but what's this employee 1 and employee 2? That's kind of tough to differentiate. Notice the employee 1 is the many n. What do we have many of? We have, well, an employee could have many direct reports if it was the manager. So this is the direct reports n. So let's go over and rename employee 1 to direct reports. This kind of thing happens to you when you have one entity that refers to itself, a self-referential entity. That means that employee 2 is the manager. We can see there's 0 or 1. You probably only have at most one manager, at least in this model. So we'll call this a manager. And now, if you're over here in the property window, you could scroll around all day, and there's not a whole lot else that's kind of interesting in here. So keep your eye on the cardinality when you're trying to distinguish these kinds of navigation properties. Anyway, we'll save, and then we're done with the model for now. You can go back as many times as you like in DevForce. It's really easy to go back around and around. That's the kind of thing you'll want to do, no problem. But right now I want to draw your attention to this TT file. Now, where did that come from? That came from us. That came from DevForce. It's the T4 template we use to generate your classes, the classes you program against. Now, it didn't happen to us here, but if you've done this for the first time, you might have seen a security warning dialog pop up. saying running this text template could be potentially dangerous to your health. It's okay. You can say okay, please do, and make sure you check the little checkbox that says do not show this message again, because you don't want to see it again. You got it. It's okay. It's from DevForce. Let's get on with it. What concerns us now is the code that gets generated from this template file, and we see that here in the Designer CS in the web project, and there's another one up here in the Silverlight project. Now, what's that about? If you look closely, you'll see that there's actually a little shortcut symbol on there, meaning that this file is pointing to the actual code file back down in the web project, which we can open up. And if we go up to the Silverlight side and click the link, Visual Studio informs us that the document is still open. We're really talking about the same physical document which happens to reside on the website. Now, why all the shenanigans? Ideally, we would have the same definition of our model on both the web side and on the Silverlight side. Our employee class would be the same on the web as it is on Silverlight. Unfortunately, we can't deploy a full .NET assembly that would hold our employee class. We can't deploy that on the Silverlight side, so we can't physically have the same types on both sides. But we can do the next best thing, which is we can strive to ensure that our implementations are the same on both the web and Silverlight. And that we can achieve by compiling the same physical class file once on the website against the full .NET assemblies, and then again on the Silverlight side against the Silverlight assemblies. And so although it's not physically the same assembly, we've got the next best thing, which is that the employee class is at least defined the same way when it's compiled against both sides. Now contrast the DevForce way with the more typical, say, RIA services approach, in which you generate a proxy employee on the Silverlight side to align with the employee class on the website. These two classes are not the same. They don't have the same implementation. And despite the heroic efforts on the part of, say, RIA services with its post-build synchronization magic to attempt to try and keep the two somehow aligned, they are not the same classes. They won't debug the same. They won't behave the same. And inevitably, the two implementations are going to drift apart, and you're going to be wrestling with the ongoing regeneration of the proxy with profound implications for long-term maintenance. But enough editorializing for the moment. What my real point is that we do indeed generate DevForce CLR classes on both sides in this one file, which reminds me, you may be wondering, where are the Entity Framework generated classes, and why would I need DevForce classes anyway? And the answer to the first question is you don't need the Entity Framework classes. We've turned generation off. You could bring it back later if you wanted to, but we don't need them. They just get in the way. And you don't want them either, because what you want are classes that are designed to work in a distributed environment like a Silverlight application, and you want them to be richer in runtime capabilities for the kinds of Silverlight applications you want to build. So that's why we have DevForce classes, and we don't need the Entity Framework classes. We're ready to look at our model and its data in the UI. So we're going to create some UI. We'll use the model view model pattern, MVVM, and we'll start by creating the view model class, which is the helper class that supplies state and behavior to the view. And you can think of this as the kind of thing you might have put in the code behind before. Anyway, we're going to bind to, one of the things we'll bind to is a collection of employees. We'll make it an observable collection, and we had to add a using statement. And then in our constructor, we will initialize the employee's property to be an empty collection. And then we're going to go fill it. And how will we do that? We're going to use our entity manager, which is kind of a context for reaching for data. Now, we could use the base entity manager from DevForce, but we're going to use the strongly typed one that we generated, which inherits from the base one, and that has some nice properties for us. We'll be able to query using one of those special generated properties called employees, which returns a query for all employees. We could extend it. It's a link query, so we could do it with a where clause using a lambda expression like this, where the first name is something or other. And we could also do it in the SQL style of link query, from amp-in manager.employees where last name, blah, blah, blah. But we're not going to do any of that. We're going to keep it simple for this demonstration and just go get all of the employees. So now the issue is, what do we do with this query? We can't execute it synchronously, so we're going to have to execute it asynchronously using the DevForce query's execute async method. We have to go async because in Silverlight you can't talk to the server synchronously. You have to talk asynchronously. So we'll use the execute async method, which has a number of overloads, and the one we're interested in the first case will be the one with a callback method. The callback method receives a strongly typed query operation object with type employee, and one of its properties is the results of the query. We'll take those results and we'll iterate it using the for each extension method, and we'll take each of those results and we'll add it to our employees collection. So that's all we've got to do there in that callback. Now, there's a couple of things to note here. We should have some error handling in here, and I really don't like having persistence code in the view model. I like to get it out of there, move it into some other kind of a helper class like a repository, or you could call it a data service class if you like. There's another way we could have done this that maybe you'll like better. Instead of doing the callback, we could simply capture that operation as a result of the execute async, and we could hook its completed event, and now we can add an event handler in Lambda style here, and essentially we're going to do the same thing because the args will have results, and so we can iterate over them and add them to the employees collection. And we have a problem with the capture variable here, so I'll just call it queue up. If you don't like Lambda handlers, you could go traditionally with the event handling method and write it out yourself. Spell it all out. So here we are with the sender, and we have to spell out what the type of the args is, entity queried event args. But eventually you see that it's exactly the same kind of thing, and it's a little bit noisier. So I'm just going to take us back to where we were, clean this up a little bit, and we'll compile to make sure that everything is working here, and it does. For our application, we're going to need a couple of controls that aren't installed in Silverlight proper. They're part of the Silverlight toolkit, which is also from Microsoft, and you can get it at Codeplex. And it really is from Microsoft. So you download the latest release, and you agree to their very reasonable terms, and you'll get a dialog box, which I'll pull in here, and you run it, and then you get them. Of course, I've already done this, so we'll just move on. I don't know about you, but I'm itching to see some data on the glass, so let's finally get to the XAML here. And this is the XAML, and the designer view of it will flip-flop them so that the design is on the top. With a document outline, you can see it's just got nothing but a grid and this text box in it. So we're going to grab the grid and we're going to grow it, I don't know, about to here. And then we're going to get rid of that DevForce text box. And now we're going to grab the data grid, because we're going to put everything on a grid in here. We're going to drop it on the canvas. And there it is, and we don't have to actually drag it to reshape it. We can go to reset layout all, and it'll fill the space. Kaplunk. Now let's zoom in on the actual XAML, because it'll be easier to do this part here. Let's see, we want to actually auto-generate the columns. So we're going to set that to true, and we're going to bind the item source of the data grid to something that's going to come from our view model when we finally establish it. We've been writing it. So we're promising here that there will be an employees property on our view model, which we know we've actually written. And we're going to save that, and I'll close up these references here for a second. And now we're going to go into the code behind, because we got to fulfill that promise. Right now there's no connection between the view model and the view. So we'll hook the loaded event so that when the main page view loads, and we're going to use a lambda hookup here, the sender and the event args, What we're going to do is we're going to set the data context of the page, our view, to a new main page view model, and that connects the dots for us. Once that happens, then our employee property comes to life and so forth. So we build, and that succeeds, and we're already launching here, and there's the title bar. We don't have any data yet. We're waiting. Async data, come on, come on. Here it is. The data have arrived. That concludes part 1 of our DevForce Silverlight tour, in which we've gone from nothing to liftoff. We've got data showing. I hope you'll all come back for part 2, in which we learn about adding and deleting and saving, and we show a little parent-child. We'll have employees to orders, and we'll learn how to watch DevForce Entity Manager as it works. Look forward to seeing you there.